Hey guys, welcome back to week 3. We are glad that you are here. If you're a new group, you should all know each other's names and faces by now. If not, get on it. You guys should know each other. We're going to get started tonight, and as we do, we're going to kick off with a couple of questions for you guys to grapple with for a few minutes.
All right, the first one is to think back. Think back to when you were a kid, teenager, I don't know, yesteryears. And think of something you really, really wanted, whether it's just like a possession or a toy or kind of anything, something you really, really wanted, and did you get it? The first thing that came to my mind when I heard this question was, as a child, always wanting a dog. Me and my brother really wanted a dog, and we did eventually get one, and he was wonderful, and we all loved him, and it was great. So that's your first question. Think back to something you really wanted. And your second question is, today, what is something that you are hoping for today? So have fun in your groups tonight. Micah's going to be on, share some more good stuff with you, and we'll see you later.
There's a phrase that we use that's a lie. And we kind of all know it's a lie, but it's a socially acceptable one. It's a popular one. You've heard it. You've probably said it. What doesn't kill us, finish it with me, makes us stronger, right? What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Sometimes that's true, right? Sometimes it's true that the bone that breaks comes back stronger. The muscles that rip a little bit, they come back stronger. Sometimes it's true that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. But sometimes what doesn't kill us leaves us with a lifelong limp. Right? Sometimes what doesn't kill us leaves us weaker. There's times when even having a really good attitude, when even having goals and plans and dreams and pathways and agency, there's times when even all the best stuff doesn't really help us to be hopeful. If you've not experienced that, if you've not experienced a time that truly seemed beyond all hope, then it can be hard to imagine. But it's not hard to imagine for everyone. There's people that say, oh, yeah, I know what that is. Maybe I'm in that right now. We're 3 weeks into this series and I have 2 concerns, all right? My first concern is this. My concern is that if we only ever get to the surface level pieces of why it's good to have hope, oh, it's just gonna be good to have hope and be hopeful and be optimistic and things like that, that'll carry us through 80, 90% of the times in our life that we really need hope. But what about the last 10%, right? What about the times when it really is really hard? And my second concern is that if you are someone who's going through this, if you're in that really, really bad spot, then it can be hard to listen and to share with the people around you. It's like, I have nothing in common with these people. They're stressed out about schedules and getting cars repaired and stuff like that, and I'm dealing with life and death stuff. I get that. That's real. And so before we move on, we need to acknowledge that and lean into that. So today we're going to talk about what do we do when there is no hope, right? What do we do when there is no hope? And my natural response as a hopeful Christian person is to say, no, there's always hope. There's always hope. God can always do something good, which he can, right? But there is a tendency in, especially the American church, to kind of always have this, look on the bright side, nothing bad will ever happen to you, name it and claim it, good things are coming your way. We're like a shiny, happy church for shiny, happy people. That thing is destructive when bad times come. One of the authors I like, says that when true loss happens to us, it feels like an alien invasion. Like it feels weird because it's so far from what we're expecting to experience. Even though he says loss is part of the normal human condition. People have been experiencing loss since as long as there's been people. And you think that it's never going to happen to you. And so he says there is this thing where we sometimes are shocked, we're surprised by loss. We're surprised by fear. We're surprised by hopelessness when it hits us, and we're not adequately prepared for what we're going to do when that happens. So today, I want to spend a little bit of time digging into that, right? What do we do when there is no hope? I've got a friend on social media who bravely shared some of his own struggle with hopelessness at a time that he ended up checking himself into a psychiatric facility because he was so close to suicide. And he said it's difficult for someone whose brain is functioning normally to even understand what this is like. He said, but I had completely, in every sense, lost the ability to hope. He said, and honestly, my Christian friends that were just like, oh, just have a little more faith. He said, it didn't make it better, it just made it worse. I felt like more of a failure, right? I just can't get it together. I can't look up. I can't feel the way I want to feel. He said, I felt worse, not better because of that. He said, the thing that made a difference for me was realizing that, he said, I had to realize that I was in a place where it was almost impossible for me to have hope. He said, it was almost impossible for me to have hope. And so I had to put my trust not in my hope, but he said, I had to put my trust in my friends and their hope for me. He said, I was at a point where it was so dark, I couldn't even believe that hope was possible. He said, but I could believe that my friends thought it was possible. I could believe that my family thought it was possible. And I was at a point where that was really the only thing that I had left, was that even when it was hard for me, he's a Christian, he said it was hard for me to have faith, but I believed in my friend's faith. I believed in my family's faith, that God had something more for me, that this was not the end, that I could get through this. And today he's doing great. He's happy and healthy and seems to have left this part of his life behind. But I thought that was profound. There will be times in our life when hope feels so foreign and alien that it's hard for us to believe that it can be possible. Like when we're in a really good place, it's grief or loss or hardship that feels alien. But sometimes when we're deep in the middle of a difficult season or a difficult moment, it's hope that feels alien. It's hope that feels unnatural, right? I think the thing that we need to do in those times is actually to lean into the hope of those around us. This is when we need people to carry us, right? This is when we need people to lean on. This is when we all need to be in this thing together. So this is why a group like your Hope Group is important. This is why it's important to have Christian friends, to have people around you that are people of hope, so that even in the dark times, you have the courage to keep going. Because that's really the essence of it, right? The essence of success is not always, do I feel hopeful? Do I feel good? Do I have a lot of faith that things are going to be okay, that everything's going to work out to the best? When you're in the really hardest parts of it, sometimes you just need to tell yourself, I'm still going to keep going. This is what hope looks like for me. Hope, we say, if you've been around Christians, or if you've been around my family, we say a lot of times that love is not a feeling, it's a choice, it's an action, right? I choose to love, I will love. Tell my kids, you got to love each other even when you don't feel loving, right? Getting up and moving on is in many senses it's a similar thing, where I am choosing to act as if I had hope even when I don't have hope. Sometimes getting out of bed in the morning is an act of hope, right? Getting in the car and driving to work, going about my day, taking a shower, right? These are actually acts of hope. And so sometimes when we're really deep into it, it's these things that we need to be encouraged to do. You know what? Don't quit. Don't stop. Keep going. You're going in the right direction. Keep going. Put your trust in someone other than yourself, someone who does have hope for you, and keep going. So what I want to do, I know usually the first section is longer and the second section is a little bit shorter. We're actually going to do more on the back half today, but I do want to just take a brief moment. Let's just pause and tell us, have there been any times when you just had to keep going? When you just didn't know, just didn't feel hopeful, when you weren't really feeling it? But were there times when you said, okay, you know what? I'm going to keep going. So answer the questions on your screen and then come back and we're going to dive into something that I think you'll really like. So I'll see you in just a minute. Thanks. Bye. All right, welcome back. Now there's a passage of scripture that has brought hope to millions of people. It's a passage that you hear if you're at a funeral. It's very possible that you'll hear this passage. If you are at if you're watching a movie and there's a funeral in the movie, it's possible that they're going to hear this passage. The passage is the 23rd Psalm. The Psalms are the songbook of Israel. There's 150 of them, and they're just numbered. The way that we read them, at least, is that they're numbered, and we just call them by the number that they are. And so Psalm number 23 is this beautiful psalm that's written by King David, and it's amazing. You've heard it before, but let me read it to you again. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, some translations would say through the valley of the shadow or valley of the shadow of death. Though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And that's a lovely, lovely, lovely song. It's a lovely bit of poetry. Now, Hebrew poetry is different from English poetry, right? American poetry. Our poems usually rhyme. Whether it's you're telling a limerick or whatever it is, like our poetry usually rhymes. It's hard for us to grasp that in other languages, rhyming is often not that big of a deal because I don't know if you took French or Spanish or German or anything when you were in high school, but there's a lot of languages where all parts of speech rhyme, like the same part of speech always rhymes because it has to do with the endings that get there. So like saying, putting together a rhyme in French is not hard because, like every other word ends with A. And so it's like, there you go. In Hebrew, it's very much the same thing. Poetry is not a matter of rhyming, but it's a matter of structure and of rhythm, all right? It's about ideas that complement each other. Now, Hebrew, we have to remember this, is that a lot of what's in the Old Testament, it's written down, but it was a culture that was more focused on the spoken word than the written word. And oral cultures that are really built around the spoken word, they have a number of different things that they do to help make sure that people remember the way things are supposed to be said, right? One of those things is a technique that is called chiasm or chiasmus. And it is a technique that says anytime you have a poem or certain types of different literature, it kind of starts and ends at the same point, and then what happens is over time, it moves in and out. I know that's hard to explain without showing you. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to show you what that looks like, all right? So I'm going to put the words up on the screen, and I'm going to show you this, the 23rd Psalm, the structure of it, going from kind of what's the least important to what is actually the most important. What is the central point of the 23rd Psalm? Now, it starts out beautifully. The Lord is my shepherd, right? I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. And that idea is actually kind of matched with the way that it ends, right? It says, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now, if you go back to the beginning, it steps in a little bit more. It says, he leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. And again, back at the end, it kind of steps in. It says, surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life. So there's like a play on words where leading and following are going together, right? He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows, right? That we are being personally led and cared for and taken care of by our shepherd, right? Even though I walk through the darkest valley or the shadow of death, right? Or you prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. It's like this idea that, man, there is something really dark that is coming at me in both the first and the second time, right? But here's the middle. It says, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. I will fear nothing. I am comforted, right? Those are a matching set. And then the statement that's in the very middle of the psalm is actually the most important part of the entire thing. And it's this, for you are with me. Do you see how that structure works? Do you see how all the pieces kind of lend themselves in? It's always leaning into this one central idea. So we go all the way in and then we come all the way out, right? It's a matched set. It's intended to be, to kind of start at a point, to move in, and then to move back. This is called a chiasmus or chiasm, chiastic structure. And it's this central point that I think is important for us to get to. It's this central point that's important for us to really camp in when we read the 23rd Psalm, right? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. All right? I don't lack anything. The main idea of the psalm is not our lack, that we're not lacking things. The main idea of the psalm is not about head covering with oil or about even going through the dark place, right? Now the dark places, it's important that we walk through it. It says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow, though I walk through the darkest valley. Sometimes it's really hard, and this is what we were talking about in the first half of our time together. Sometimes it's very, very hard to walk through the dark valley. The promise of God is not that we will never go through dark valleys. That's the promise I want, right? That's what I want God to say. Micah, if you follow me, you will never go through dark valleys. Everything's always going to be happy and positive. Everything's going to be up and to the right. You know, your finances are going to be great, and your health is going to be great, and your future is going to be great, and your job's going to be great, and everything's going to be great. And it's just smooth sailing from here because you're following me. The funny thing is that if anything, I find that the opposite is true. You know, when I see someone go all in, part of me there's a huge part of me, obviously, that's rejoicing, like, yes, this is awesome. But there's also a part of me that's like, ooh, man, here it comes, right? Because I've known so many people that life was going pretty good, right? Devil wasn't mad at them, right? Life was going pretty good. And then they go all in and it's like, man, all of a sudden these terrible things happened in my life. And I was expecting God to come through for you. God to come through for me. And he does. But he doesn't say, you're never going to have any problems. Explicitly in the text, it says, when you go through the darkest valley, what? He makes the whole thing light. He makes it easy. He makes the path easy to walk. It doesn't say that. It says, when you go through the darkest valley, he will be with you. And that's really fundamentally at the very base of everything else. That is fundamentally the hope that we have. It is not that bad things will never happen. It is not that we will never experience loss or grief or pain. It is that we will never, ever in our life go through these things alone. That's what we learn from the 23rd Psalm. Not that we're always going to feast and have a banquet in front of our enemies. It's that we will never be alone. Never again, the rest of our lives, will we ever be alone. God is always there with us. Now, we're going to talk about hope for the future next week, and so we're not done. This isn't all of what we're going to talk about by any means. We're just now hitting the halfway point. But it's really key that we actually understand that God is with us. And so I want to tell a little bit more story. You guys have been doing great at telling stories so far. Help us tell a little bit more of your story. What is a time when it looked bleak, but you were able to believe that God was with you? If you don't have a time where you're like, man, I don't know if anything comes to mind, it's okay. You don't have to share this. But I'm hopeful that in your group, you've got several people that can say, oh yeah, here's a time when even when it was darkest, even when it was bleakest, I still felt like God was saying, I'm with you, I'm for you, I haven't forgotten you. And sometimes that's enough. I talked earlier about my friend who was able to put his faith in his friends. He was able to borrow some of his friends' hope in a really difficult time. But that's actually what we do when God is our friend, right? God has not lost hope. God has never lost hope. Even in the darkest valley, God still has hope for us. And so part of what we can do in dark times is lean on his hope, to borrow his hope, to believe in his hope, even when we can't believe in our own. All right? So that's it. Go ahead and do the closeout questions, and I'll see you next week. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Hey friends, we hope you had a great time with week 3. As you leave, we of course have more questions for you to take with you into this week. The first is, how easy is it for you to feel that God is with you when you're moving through dark times?
Yeah, and the second is kind of like it. I want you to take a minute and think about a situation in your life right now, or maybe a situation in a friend's life where things are kind of dark right now, or you're like going through a dark time, or they're going through a dark time. And just take a time this week to sit and think about that. And really what I would encourage you to do is pray for those situations. Pray for that situation in your life or in your friend's life, and ask God to be a part of that. All right, well, that's all we got. So thank you very much for being here with us, and we're excited to see you next week.